And now I have the privilege of introducing Crystal Martin. Crystal is a software developer and principal consultant at Slalom. She is also one of the co-organizers of Strange Loop. Has anybody gone to Strange Loop? Yeah. So you can give her a thanks a little bit later. And as an advocate for diversity in tech and business. As a Detroit Public Schools graduate, Crystal is passionate about equal access to education at all levels. She earned a BS in nutritional science at Michigan State University, go Sparty, and she started teaching in St. Louis, Missouri as a 2010 Teach for America core member and taught middle school math in St. Louis for 4 years. After her time in the classroom, she wanted to explore a career that would allow her to bring together her love for creativity, science, and community, and tech was just the right place. Crystal's a lifetime learner and a serial hobbyist who is currently learning photography, knitting, and all things tech while fighting the patriarchy one keystroke at a time. Yep, that's right. And you can find her on Twitter at CoderMeow, CoderMeow, and her talks, including a super cool TED Talk, are all on YouTube. She can also really crush it at karaoke, which I learned on Monday night. Please welcome Crystal Martin.
Well, good morning. Thank you all for coming. I know the first session of the day is always kind of like, whew, can I make it? I'm Crystal Martin, as I said. So I just kind of wanted to start with Mercury's in Gatorade right now. So grace in space, if I say something weird, so Mercury is if you're into astrology, Mercury is the ruler of technology and communication. And here we are at a tech conference, so. But yeah, just grace in space. If I say something weird, come talk to me afterwards. Like, I don't really understand what you meant by that. So I want to start, before I get into the content of this talk, I have to tell you all a story. So keynoting this conference is actually a full circle moment for me, and I will tell you why. One, this is like May, like literally mid-May is the 6-year anniversary of me even knowing that technology was a path that I could take. And is Brad Urani here? There he is. I won't ask you to stand, just give a little wave. So essentially this guy probably unknowingly launched my tech career. And so first of all, I feel I have to confess, I'm a JavaScript developer, but I'm kind of a fan, I'm a Rails fangirl, I'm a Ruby fangirl because of this reason. This community is where I landed first in trying to explore whether technology was a career path for me. And so this community is also where I met Brad. And so before I was a technologist, as mentioned before, I was a public school teacher. I was a middle school math teacher dealing with the little crazies. If you know middle schoolers, wow, they are so entertaining. And in my 4th year of teaching, I realized that I needed to hang up the hat. And I will tell you, it's not because of the kids, which you could probably imagine, school systems, bureaucracy, all of that. One of the most important jobs of my life. Nothing would be harder than that, which is why I don't get really pressed about tech stuff, because nothing's actually on fire. And yeah, literally there were fires, so if this code doesn't get deployed, we'll all survive. That decision was really that's a keynote in itself, why I decided to leave teaching, but I'll just leave it at that. So I was trying to figure out what was next. I kept hearing about boot camps. And this is back in 2014, actually. But at the time, the only people that were going to boot camps were ex-investment bankers and lawyers paying a mint to go to boot camps. I saw the price, and I was like, my little poor, teacher salary self with student loan debt, no, I can't do this. And so I decided to make a profile on meetup.com. And at that time, it was the hotness. So I go on there, and I type in coding meetups. And when I say I had no idea what programming actually was I needed, and I'll show you how. So I'm scrolling, and I see St. Louis Java User Group. And I was like, ew, that sounds boring. And then I saw C#.NET Meetup, and I was like, I don't want it. But then I see the STL Ruby Meetup. And it had this cute little 8-bit logo, and I was like, ooh, I want to go to this one. That logo is so cute. And I like rubies, I'm a Cancer, it's my gemstone. This is perfect. It's like a sign from the heavens. So the day comes around, I go and I show up to the Ruby meetup, and I walk in, and everyone just looks at me, and I look at them, and they're like, kind of thinking like, is she lost? And it's kind of in this weird part of town, like you don't really know the place is there. So I walk in with my little backpack and fro, and I'm like, hey guys. And I'm the only person of color in this room, the only woman, at least that night. And Amos King, who was the organizer at that time, kind of like runs up to me and is like, hey, hi, so happy you're here. Get some pizza, get some beer, sit down. And so that night they were doing this mob session. And of course I have no idea what's going on. And Amos grabs me and sits me down. He said, we're gonna just pair on this problem that we have. And he's like, I'm gonna show you how to use the Ruby REPL. And that, my friends, is when I realized that Ruby was a programming language. I truly thought that Ruby was what the cool nerds decided to call their meetup. But the people were so nice there, and it's the reason I came back to a second one. You think about, that could have gone so differently, like literally just walking in being truly idiotic, and then being like, hey, come back. I think that like basically determined that like, yeah, maybe I can actually do this. But anyway, because of my awesome experience, I came back for the second visit, and I meet this guy, Brad Urani. And at the time, he was mentoring an entry-level programmer at his company through a program called LaunchCode, which is an organization in St. Louis that trains people in technology and then places them in apprenticeships so they can learn on the job with local businesses. And so we're talking, and I'm like, I want to do that. And he's like, wow, you seem really excited, but you don't know anything. So my friend started this like, girl coder thing, coder girl, something like that. Here's her email, email address, phone number, go talk to her. Well, that thing ended up being Coder Girl. And this is where I actually learned how to code, and I eventually became one of the founding members of that nonprofit organization at the team at LaunchCode. And I just want to side note, the program is now called Women Plus at LaunchCode, so their marketing team does not kill me. But in essence, Brad, you're the reason I'm a software developer and why I'm standing here today talking to you on this stage at RailsConf. So thank you. And I have some more funny Rails and Ruby connections. I actually almost wore red shoes. I had them, and then I was like, okay, that is so corny. Don't do that. But yeah, I have some funny stories about like just strange connections with this community. Ask me after if you're interested, tweet at me. I'll tell you more. So when I was asked to keynote at RailsConf, of course I went through a range of emotions like, oh my God, why me? Call somebody else, I'm not qualified. Oh God, existential dread. I haven't been on a stage since 2019, I can't do it. But I ended up saying yes, and I had this whole idea to do a talk on lateral thinking, and I had a grand plan. You see, I was on this difficult project. I mean, it was a classic kind of Phoenix project, scenario. Changing priorities, onboarding new devs every 2 weeks, difficult client, all of that stuff. Everything that makes a project and technology difficult, and especially consulting projects, that was this project. And so I thought maybe this is one of those scenarios where I can just try anything, like anything goes, everything's on fire, let's just do some stuff, And I thought, let's experiment. Let's try some new creative approaches to problem solving. And I remember reading this article about lateral thinking during the pandemic. And essentially it was saying, maybe we should use lateral thinking to solve tough problems in tough situations. Instead of going in this linear direction of like, we've seen this before, let's do it. We're in a totally different environment, maybe we should try something else. And so this is the definition of lateral thinking. So lateral thinking is a manner of solving problems using an indirect and creative approach via reasoning that is not immediately obvious. But anyway, I rallied my team around this, and we brainstormed all these different approaches that we can employ to experiment with lateral thinking to try to do things differently. And I had the hope that like maybe we can kind of pull ourselves out of this rut, and pull our client out of this, sort of reactionary pattern of thinking. And so this got me really jazzed, right? Like I feel like I had this renewed sense of excitement and energy around this project. And I was going to deploy these lateral thinking tactics like defining a transitional object, or instead of thinking about what you should do the wrong thing. Or, you know, one of my teammate, Chris, came up, he's like, instead of making the client's problems our problems, make our problems their problems. And I was like, this is amazing, it's gonna be genius. I'm gonna test all of this out, and then I'm gonna come to RailsConf, and I'm gonna tell you all about how we did it, and how exciting it was, and it like made our team so like revived, and everyone loved it, and the clients hated it, but we like reveled in it anyway, and we had fun doing it. And then the project proceeded to blow up in my face. And I won't get into details, but I was still pretty determined to stick to this topic, so I did the thing that every neurotic, you know, the public speaker does, and then I read the arguments against lateral thinking. Does anyone else do that? I always try to find the counter arguments before I get on the stage. It's probably like, that's another thing for another day. So I made the fatal mistake of looking at the counter arguments, and I just want to show you some of the quotes that I saw. So De Bono, who is the guy who kind of coined this term and this theory, De Bono's popular theory is textbook pseudoscience, unsound, untested, derivative of real, unacknowledged research. In their willful oddity, De Bono's lateral speculations could be adverbs for G.K. Chesterton's maxim, there are no rules for architecture for a castle in the clouds. So needless to say, this kind of describes the situation that I was in. I was just gonna come talk to you about theory with not putting anything into practice, so that kind of put the nail in the coffin for my talk. And I was pretty stuck, like crying stuck. Like, what am I doing? I usually have too many ideas. But I was talking to my wonderful friend Liz, and I was telling her how I was stuck, and I just didn't feel, I can't do this idea anymore. I can't get up here and just talk about theories and say, go try it, good luck. I mean, I could, but that'd be whack. So we're talking through it, and she asked me, she said, Crystal, why did you want to talk about lateral thinking in the first place? Was it about the concept of lateral thinking? Because it's kind of all over the place. Like, is it actually that interesting to you? But what she helped me realize is that the reason I wanted to talk about lateral thinking and the reason why I wanted to employ that on my project is because lateral thinking in and of itself is inherently collaborative. And that's the piece that I felt like I was missing, and that's what I wanted. And so she really helped me sort of realize that, and that what I really want to talk to you today about is collaboration with others and the fact that we need people. And I have to be honest with you, the reason why I got into technology is the people component. That's the thing I love the most about being in software, way more than the brass tacks of engineering. And I have to say that made me feel like it was hard for me to admit that to myself because I was worried it made me seem like I wasn't serious enough. But the engineering aspect for me is only exciting when I get to do it with people, working towards a common goal and creating a working product for people. As an example, I was literally on a project where I was building a warranty claims app for tires, tractor tires. Do I look like a person that is interested in farming or tractor tires? No, I didn't care about that. But I love that project so much because I was collaborating with the client on a day-to-day basis. I was meeting my users, and they were looking at what I was doing and saying, oh my God, this is gonna be so much better to use than what we have now. And I worked crazy hours on that project and loved doing it because of the people. The tech didn't matter to me that much. And so today I want to talk to you about the most important element of our jobs, in my opinion, and that is the human component. The people, and I'm gonna get some water because I'm on the stage. So since we're talking about, the people element of this job, me, I'm kind of burned out. I don't know about you. This year has been tough. And a lot of my teammates were too. And I think it's because so often as developers, we become so ego-attached to our outcomes. We get defined by what we do. And we forget the people that we're dealing with, the systems that we're dealing with are built for people and by other people. And this whole notion of the meritocracy of this myth that we exist in makes us actually believe that what we produce is our value. That's it. Our value to an organization or a team. And I feel like it's how we've been conditioned, and especially like in consulting, like we call people resources. Excuse me, I am a human being. I am not a resource. You are not a resource. So show of hands, how many people got promotions this year? Yeah, woo, give yourself, yeah. Congratulations. Me too. Yeah, I feel like I've experienced pretty rapid career growth in the past year. But you know what happened? It made me feel less confident. Does anyone else? I feel like once I got the promotion, I was like, oh my God, now I have to prove myself. And they're like, you already got the promotion? But this is what happens. You kind of get in this tunnel vision. And you know what helped me get out of that? People who actually care about me as a person and also see me as a valuable human being, regardless of my technical delivery. Many of us have spent the last 2 years sitting behind rectangular boxes, pushing and shipping code, feeling completely disconnected from our colleagues and community. And jobs, I don't know, for you, jobs kind of just became a job. It was lonely, it was tiring, but I feel like the only thing that got me through that time were my people. So I want to discuss how we can actually show up people first, and I want to break this conversation into 2 parts. I want to talk about, and I'll talk about it later, but your personal element, but then also the element of others. So building teams and technology that actually works for people requires, 1, knowledge and acceptance of yourself. So I think a lot of time in leadership, we learn a lot about how to manage teams, how to support people, how to grow folks. And we never talk about where are you starting from? What's going on with you? So number 1, we need that. And then 2, once we're able to do that introspection, we can then intuit the needs of others and meet them. And you can't do number 2 without number 1, as I just said. It's kind of like the whole oxygen mask concept. You got to put yours on before putting it on anyone else. You might be running around halfway, stumbling, passing out masks to other people, and you don't have one on yourself. You've got to remember you're the first person you have to take care of, and then you are ready to take care of others. And I want to do this using a couple simple frameworks for you to look at. So let's talk about the first step of knowledge of self. So you can't really be intuitive about other people around you if you don't know where you are. So I want to give you some language and some techniques that can help you cultivate a greater sense of awareness for yourself that you can use on the spot. This way, when you're dealing with other people and supporting them, you always know where you are mentally and emotionally and how to act based on that mental and physical awareness. And when I talk about leadership, I want you to understand, I'm not just talking to people leaders in this room. Everybody here, if you work on a team of people, you are a leader, right? You're a leader of the future you're writing. You're a leader of whatever you're doing on a day-to-day. You're a leader of yourself any day. So this is not just a talk for people leaders or anything like that. So one concept that I really love is this above the line or below the line. One of the best questions you can ask is this. And this is where you want to land. And this language is from a book called 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. Some of you might have read it. I highly recommend it. It's a little woo-woo, but it really helps. I love it. And I like it as a shared language for your team. And this is taken directly from the website, but I want to describe what this means. So in our experience, at any time, we are either above the line or below the line. When we're defensive and closed and committed to being right, we are below the line. Or put another way, we are committed to the survival of our ego. When we are open, curious, and committed to learning, we're above the line. So when you're below the line, essentially what that means is you are acting from fear. And when you're acting from fear, that means your ego is under threat. And so let's go ahead and just quickly define fear. Fear is a mental and physical response to a perceived threat. And fear really literally inhibits us from being able to understand what's happening in the situation. We're literally cognitively and emotionally hijacked. We are back in the place where we think there is a saber-tooth tiger coming for us. And I talk about fear because I don't think we always kind of associate fear with being cowardly, but fear is honestly the baseline emotion for a lot of the anger that we feel. Have you ever heard the phrase, anger is the bodyguard of fear? Basically, even when you're angry, that means you're probably concerned about something, maybe yourself or other, or your perception, and that's really important to be conscious of. So when you're in that hijacked state, you cannot think correctly because your brain can't access your prefrontal cortex to tell you there's no threat, and you need to think clearly about where you are. And so the thing about fear and the thing about anger is that it's a physical response and a mental response to a perceived threat. So think about the last time you've been in a meeting where this probably happened last week. I know I was in a meeting last week just 2 days ago where I was like, I'm mad. I shouldn't say anything, but I want to. I actually did. So I'm like, I got to practice what I preach here, but it's very easy to get on the stage and tell you. But the techniques work, which we're going to talk about. So think about a time you were in a tense meeting, a tense conversation, and what was happening to you physically? Because our bodies have all this intelligence to actually tell us what's going on in the moment. So I'll tell you some telltale signs that I'm below the line is an accelerated heartbeat, short, quick breathing, a clenched jaw. I know for some people it's nail biting or chewing on the side of your jaw or your inside your mouth. Or another thing to even recognize is that everyone's fear response is different. So, the whole concept of fight, flight, freeze. Some people don't feel the need to confront. Maybe you freeze. Maybe you start holding your breath or not saying anything. And then here's some mental manifestations of being below the line. So you might be thinking about, how am I going to look if I don't speak up? How's my team going to look? Do I look like a good leader? Are you intent on being correct? Are you thinking in your mind I already know how this is going to go? I'm the one that knows this. Are you focused on being correct no matter what? Can you not let it go, right? Whatever that it is. And are you feeling kind of paranoid or feeling like there's a lack of resources or lack of time, having a scarcity mindset? These are all things you can think about when you're in these kind of conversations to think, where am I? And so addition to this below line, above the line concept, I also want to talk about the drama triangle. Has anyone else ever heard of this? Drama triangle, I love it. So this was developed and described by a psychologist in the 60s by the name of Stephen Karpman. And it's a way to describe social interaction, specifically around conflict. And so you can think of the triangle as actors in a play. This is you below the line. Am I the drama? You are the drama. So let's look at these roles in this drama. Let's talk about the persecutor first. It's all your fault. This is what the persecutor says. Oh my God, why would you do it that way? Didn't I show you how to do this last week? Were you listening? Well, if your team had to set up a deployment pipeline and didn't break every 3 days, we could deploy. My team is ready. Persecutor, it's your fault. The rescuer says, don't worry, I'll handle it. Oh, you're having trouble with that? I got it, don't worry. And it's really cool because, you get to have control over how the outcome is, and you get to do it the way you want it done, and you also are able to look like a hero while you're doing it. And the victim says, why is this happening to me? Why does this always happen to me? I just didn't know. It wasn't my fault. This other team, they're the reason why this feature didn't get finished. What did you expect? I have 2 early career devs on my team. It's too much. That's the victim. So, in the spirit of self-acceptance and knowledge of self, my next question is, which one are you? Because you can't really be intuitive about other people if you are, stuck in your own loop. So think about, which one of these are you? And I'll show it to you for reference here again. And I also want to note here that you can jump from role to role, even in one conversation. You can jump from, persecutor, no, you didn't, to it's me. You see this all the time. And I actually kind of like this, even for relationships, your kids, your family, your, parents, partners. This stuff applies to that. And if you're conscious of it, you can watch someone being okay, victim. Oh, okay, persecutor, you're here. It's pretty helpful. And so I'll tell you, instead of asking you to tell me, I'll tell you, my go-to is victim. So raise your hand if your role you think on the drama triangle is victim. It's funny because a lot of people will say, I'm not the victim, I'm not a victim, I'm not a victim. Raise your hand if you're a persecutor. Raise your hand if you're a rescuer. So watch this. So which one do you think is the most people in this room? Rescuer. Software developers, all of y'all trying to be heroes. I got it. 80 hours later, you're oh my God, why am I doing this to myself? But you get it, right? These are the safety rules we go to when we feel like our identity or our ego is being threatened. And it's vitally important to be aware of this because it shows up in how you interact with other people. Think about being a software developer and being a rescuer and how handicapping that is to the rest of your team, right? That no one else gets to learn. No one else gets to take on challenges and make mistakes because you're constantly saving them from that while beating yourself up in the process. You think on the first hand, you think it's helpful, but then you realize how destructive it actually is. And so you're probably wondering, okay, we belabored the point. How do I get off of this triangle? So I have a couple strategies that I think are important. And again, even if this is kind of weird, just go along with it. Think about it, open your mind, you know. The first thing is to breathe. You're in a meeting, you realize you're below the line, you are hijacked, you're ready to come off of mute and go off, right? Breathe. Because I've noticed that when I'm pissed off or when I'm ready to go, I'm holding my breath. I realize I'm holding my breath in that moment. And that literally cuts off, cuts off your brain. You're not getting enough oxygen. So the first step is to breathe. And I actually learned recently, and I tried to find the source and I couldn't find it, so y'all can, I don't know. I thought it was interesting. You know how when you cry, you do 2 short in breaths, and then a long out breath? Apparently that is a mechanism for self-soothing. So when you are upset or when you are hijacked, you can literally do 2 breaths in quickly and a long out breath and calm yourself down. I'm telling you, it actually works. But the cool thing about breathing is that breathing requires presence, so you have to be conscious to remember that to do it intentionally. And then breathing gives you time between that stimulus and that response. So you can give yourself a moment and give yourself an opportunity to stop and think about where you are before you act. Especially as leaders, right? Your decisions and the way you show up is not going to just affect you, it's going to affect everybody else. Another question to ask yourself is, where do you feel it? Again, this body intelligence the concept. The more acquainted you get with your bodily reactions and your physical reactions to threat, the faster you can detect it and get to a state where you're able to shift from it. So take notice where you feel it in your body when you're triggered. For me, I feel hot on my face and in my chest, or I have a feeling in the pit of my stomach. When I know that I'm at that point, I know that I'm hijacked. And anything I say after that is probably gonna make things harder for me and everybody else. So think about that. What are your sort of physical triggers that come up for you? And the next thing you wanna do is ask yourself, am I ready to shift? Because there's awareness and there's acceptance, right? There are some times when you are not ready to shift. You're still mad. And so knowing that you can be honest with yourself and say, I should stay on mute. I sometimes even under the desk, I hold my hands under the desk. If I'm in a meeting in person, I squeeze my hands to expel what I'm feeling so that I don't lose my job. It's helpful. And then if you're willing and ready, make the shift. And shifting can look like a lot of things. There are times where I will turn the camera off and I will literally stand up. I'll stretch out, I'll walk across the room, I'll pet my cat. But shifting, and in this sort of theory of thinking, they even say stepping into another role, being okay, I'm hijacked here, now I'm gonna step into a conscious, I'm ready. Anything that works for you, that's one thing you could do. You could even also try opening yourself. So taking a more open approach. You know when you're mad, sometimes people do this in meetings, they're you're closed off. So literally opening your posture, it basically cues your brain that you are open, you are trying to shift from the state that you're in. It could be sitting up in your chair, it could be reframing your question. Sometimes I write down what I want to say, and then I write down the reframe in a more positive and productive light before I say it. And not often, but I'm working on it. We can support each other. So you want to give yourself a physical cue that you are shifting from being in that below the line state to hopefully moving to above the line state. And so now that we've talked about getting clear with yourself and where you are, you can now work with other people. You can look at what's happening around the room with other folks and intuit what they need. And that shift helps us do that. So what is above the line? Above the line is being open, it's being curious, committed to learning, and being detached from being right. Literally letting go of the idea that you are right. And above the line leaders speak in the I, and they take responsibility for their own feelings and what they feel is important. So when I say speak in the I, it's like, I feel as, or I notice, or I'm making up the story, rather than saying, this person did this and this is why it happened. Speaking in the I from your perspective and owning what you say. And so now I'm going to talk about an alternative to the drama triangle that allows you to be an above-the-line leader. And that is the empowerment dynamic. So in David Emerald's book, The Empowerment Dynamic, he illustrates an alternative to this dreaded drama triangle. And it suggests a mindset shift. And it's kind of a corny book. At Slalom, they asked us to read it, but it's actually amazing. It is so good. It's such an important thing to read and to integrate into your work. But the empowerment dynamic can help you make that shift you need so that you don't fall into the trap of the drama triangle. And so for this part, instead of talking about the theory, I'm going to tell you what the roles are here, but then I'm going to illustrate those roles with people in my life that have actually helped me. So the first one, we talked about the persecutor. In the empowerment dynamic, the persecutor turns into a challenger. And a challenger says, I believe you can do better than this. I've seen you do it before. Still clear, still direct, but it's not accusatory and it doesn't beat you down. Your rescuers, the rescuer becomes a coach. The coach says, what do you think is the best way to handle it? And the victim becomes a creator. What can I do to create the most positive outcome given these circumstances? So I'm going to go back. I feel like there's some folks who want to get, okay, I got you. Oh, wait. Oh, you know what, actually it's going to come back up, I promise. So if you want to get a picture of it, it's going to come back up. And now I have to go through the build again, so yeah. You can, we got time. Damn it, y'all, I'm sorry. It's going to come back up. So what does a creator do? Well, a creator, they do not allow themselves or others to become a victim. They focus on forward movement and outcomes. And they look for wins when it feels like there aren't any. And so the creator in my life is Dory Davis. Dory is a senior principal at Slalom. She is an amazing technology leader, enterprise architect, total badass. If you ever get an opportunity to meet her, work with her in Slalom, she's amazing. She's my mentor and my friend. And the thing about Dory as a creator, this is what she does. I want to talk to you about creator from an actual human perspective. She's always like, Crystal, how can you be a creator in the situation? And I'm like, oh, I don't want to be a creator. I don't want to do it. But she gives me a limited amount of time to pout and lick my wounds and be like, I'm a victim, they're beating me up. But then she says, okay, we're done with that. And when I say sort of like mean things about myself or my abilities, she literally makes me repeat them and then reframe them in a positive light. So not, I can't do this, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it yet, but I believe that I can. She's a creator. And she talks through the situation that I'm in to help me figure out how can I create value for myself and for others. And along these, and if you know Dory, you'd also think that she's probably a challenger, which she absolutely is. But the creator aspect I love about her is that she always makes me come up with a plan. No matter what situation I find myself in, she listens. And then she asks, how can you be a creator? And then she says, come up with a plan on the spot. Even if it's not that well, worked out, but coming up with a plan to supersede and not be a victim, that is what she does for me. And this is important creators are important for teams because of this. They find the opportunity to do something even when it feels like there isn't one. And so let's talk about a challenger. What does a challenger actually do? Well, challengers are truth tellers. None of this stuff is about skating around what's obvious. There are problems on teams, right? There's problems with products. We have to bring those things to light. It's just the way in which we do it. And so a challenger, they tell the truth. They say, this is what's happening. But it's not to accuse other people or to focus more on the problem. But they're also willing to go against the grain for what is right. And they encourage others to go for the highest good. And so the challenger in my life and in my career is Cheryl. Cheryl is on our global team in operations. She is also a woman with a ton of experience. And I love her because she always challenges my perception. And she challenges any assessment that I have of a situation. Will say, well, is that really what's happening? Is that a story or is that fact? She also pushes me to do the legwork based off of what I say or, my assumptions are. She literally goes and say, okay, no, go find out if that is the case before you start operating off of this assumption. She challenged me to find a way to be successful. Find a way. And she also cultivates the challenger in me so that she helps me figure out how to be productive in my pushback rather than burning bridges, because sometimes that's what I want to do. And then finally, what does a coach do? Well, coaches see the creator and the people that they support. They see what your ability actually is, your ability to get things done, and your ability to figure things out. And they also guide you on the how instead of doing it for you. And a good coach is not attached to the outcomes. I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but they're not attached to the outcome of what you're doing. They are merely there to facilitate what you're trying to do. And they're supportive and encouraging along the way. But coaches hold you accountable for what you say you're going to do, for what you say you want. They hold you accountable for that, and they reorient you and help reorient you based on what you've said you want to accomplish. And so my coach is also my mentor. He's the director of ITE practice at Slalom St. Louis. Nick is my coach. He guides me on how to solve tough problems myself. He makes me get clear on what I want and what I want to do, and he holds me accountable for that. He says, well, Chris, you said you wanted to learn this, so why are you shying away from this project? Why are you shying away from this challenge? This is what you said you wanted to do. But the thing about a coach is he wholeheartedly believes in my ability to figure it out. And he acts on that assumption. So he doesn't go, oh, I know Chris is going to be afraid of this thing, so I'm not going to put her on that. He's like, no, I'm putting you on that, and you're going to figure it out, and I'm going to help you along the way. Literally just the other day, y'all, I got staffed on this project. It feels way out of my league. I'm going to be very honest with you. It's like enterprise architect level, and I was in a meeting with the client, and I was freaking out. I was like, I can't do this. Take me off of here. Roll me off. And he called me, and he was like, Crystal, what is going on? And I was just on a tizzy. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this, blah, blah, blah. And so everything that I said, I was like, I don't know if I can, figure out how to push back with this architect. He said, so you're telling me that you don't really know how you would formulate an argument based off of the current architecture and talk to a client architect about that? And everything I said, he just kind of restated what I was saying to him. And then I was still kind of complaining, and then eventually I was like, okay, what I mean is I'm afraid. And I don't feel prepared, but I believe that I could do it, but I'm going to need your help. And he was like, okay, that's what I want to hear. I can work with that. I can't work with, I can't do it, and I'm roll me off, right? And so we formulated a plan. We're going to get together, we're going to whiteboard, and he's going to guide me, but I am still going to be the front man. I can't take him to the meeting with me. That's what a coach does. And how many work in consulting? I know on consulting projects, sometimes this is what especially technology leaders do. They go, oh, this person's not ready for it, so I'm going to go ahead and roll them off, and I'm going to go on the project, the fourth project that I'm on, right? Technology leaders do that all the time, rescuing, right? But a coach says, no, you got it. You're going to have it, but I'm going to lead you and help you along the way. And so this is what we need, leaders who empower. Having empowered leaders who do their best to operate above the line, these are the people who have fueled my professional growth and personal growth. And I want this so badly for you and for the people that you manage or work with. So I want you to take a moment to reflect. How can you shift from that place on the drama triangle to that new place of the empowerment dynamic? So think about rescuers, but wherever you fall on that spectrum, on that drama triangle, think about where you are right now. Even if you want, think about a situation that you're in that you were realizing maybe in this talk that you are acting like one of these things. If you want, take a minute, write down your thoughts, and think about how you can shift. And another thing I want to add here too is, are there people that you maybe need to say sorry to or have a clearing with, right? So that you can reset your relationship with them and kind of get off that drama triangle with them and invite them to get on the empowerment dynamic with you. And how can you use some of this language that you just learned to do that? So I'll give you a minute. Well, take a little drink. Give you a moment to reflect and think about what you could do. So with that, I'll give you an example just this week. When I was definitely on the drama triangle as a victim and then a persecutor, I was like, that account team, I had to go back to one of my colleagues and say, I am sorry that I showed up like that. And I did kind of explain why, and I don't think that's actually appropriate. You should just apologize for the behavior. I was like, I'm crabby, I just got up early this morning, but I had to go to him and say, I know that I was acting like a victim in that, and I appreciate your reframe. I appreciate you helping me figure out how I should look at this situation. And it helps. Even when you're the victim, being a victim on a team can be very destructive, obviously, and also kind of tiring for the people that have to deal with you. So I feel like I needed to do that. So think about some folks that you can have a clearing with. And I'm actually going to go back to this. If you need a minute to actually see the, the slide, how can you make that transition from persecutor to challenger, rescuer to coach, victim to creator? And so in closing, during a very stressful time in my life, someone told me the best advice. When you're backed in a corner, when you're feeling blocked, when you're feeling like you just don't have it, focus on gratitude. And this is this talk. That's this talk. This talk was written by so many people who have helped me, supported me, and guided me, and quite frankly, loved me through some of the hardest parts of my career. And I really, really am deeply, eternally grateful for that. And I would not have been able to successfully do this talk without those folks. So thank you to the people that I talked about. Thank Brad, all those folks. But in closing, what I want you to do is I want you to take a minute, and I want you to think of the people in your life or your community, job, wherever, family even, that you can play one of these empowerment roles for. Who's someone in your life that you can be a coach to, that you can be a creator with, or a challenger? So write down those names, write down like 3 names, and give them some focus in the next few weeks. Put it into practice. And then finally, I want you to think about people that have played these roles for you in your career. And take a minute and make a plan to thank them. Think about those folks. Because we are all here because someone else created a way for us to be here. Thank you.